It's a common sense recap of the big stories. It's Katz and Cosby on 77 WABC.
Professor Alan Dershowitz, of course, the great Harvard Law School professor emeritus. It's great to have you here. Of course, your book is Act Blue. Professor, I want to ask you, because we know that Kamala Harris is going to be doing what they're describing as their closing arguments tonight at the Ellipse. And she is going to be invoking January 6th all over again. And she, even a leak sort of, or a release, I should say, of some of her comments tonight are going to be, how could President Trump even considering releasing any of these January 6 horrible criminals? You represent some. Explain just what this means and that how dark they are going in their final days.
What worries me again is the attack on democracy, the Sixth Amendment, the right to trial, the presumption of guilt. The Democrats assume that everybody who was at January 6th was guilty. The guy I'm representing had the charges recently dropped against him, the felony charges, because there was no evidence that he did anything wrong. We're seeing Democrat-controlled groups like the 65 Project going after lawyers who represented Donald Trump, including me. And so there is a real threat to democracy, and it's coming from the left, from radical Democrats, from the Squad, and from the people who are supporting many who are supporting Kamala Harris. So I worry about that. I worry about their use of the term Nazi or Hitler. That's Holocaust denial. When you say that Donald Trump, who's never hurt anybody or put anybody in a gas chamber, is Hitler, what you're saying is Hitler didn't put anybody in gas chambers. What you're saying when you say everybody in Madison Square Garden was a Nazi, well, the Nazis weren't so bad. They just came and they listened to some speeches. So this kind of Holocaust denial that we see going on among some Democrats is appalling to me as a Jew and appalling to me as an American.
Yeah, I agree. And the fact, what's really sad for me to see, Professor, is the rhetoric has really ratcheted up. I mean, they are just throwing out the word Hitler like every second. And I agree. I find it despicable. You know who was at Madison Square Garden? There was a 94-year-old Holocaust survivor who said, "How dare you?"
Yeah, there were Israeli flags. There were, many good and decent people. It's a repeat of the deplorables, the basket of deplorables, which may very well have cost Hillary Clinton the election 8 years ago. You can't group people together in this way and just assume that everybody who disagrees with Harris automatically is a Nazi or a Nazi supporter or a Hitler supporter. You just can't do that, and especially at a time when there's so much anti-Semitism, so many attacks on Jewish kids in colleges and universities. My new pamphlet is coming out tomorrow called The 10 Big Anti-Israel Lies and How to Respond to Them with Truth. We're trying to get that to 1 million college students at 1,000 universities around the United States in the hope of trying to change the narrative and introduce some truth into this. And it doesn't help when everybody's calling Democrats are calling Republicans Nazis and comparing the 1939 Nazi rally just because it took place in Madison Square Garden to the rally that took place the other night in the same. It wasn't even the same location, by the way. Madison Square Garden changed dramatically over those 80 years, but it's in a different location. But Bill Clinton has spoken to Madison Square Garden. I've spoken to Madison Square Garden. I got an honorary doctorate from a city university of New York, and I gave the graduation speech in Madison Square Garden. So am I a Nazi?
Yeah, that's incredible. FDR. A lot of people, it's incredible. Governor Pataki, you have a question for Dershowitz.
Yes, Alan, what's just incredible to me is not, first of all, the fact that they call Trump a Nazi or Hitler, and they compare the rally that was held a couple of days ago to 1939. But what is amazing to me is the fact that the media plays this up. You don't say something like this unless you know you're going to get coverage. And the media just ran with this for over a week that, oh, my God, he's holding a rally in the same place the Nazis did 80 years ago. What can we do about just the complete unfairness of a media?
You can't change your vote. I mean, the idea that an election might be influenced by a really bad, unfunny joke about Puerto Rico. By the way, I learned afterward, I didn't like the joke. I thought it was in very bad taste. I learned afterward that Puerto Rico, in fact, has a serious problem with garbage collection. That has no bearing on the people. The people are wonderful, wonderful, wonderful people. But apparently there was some absurd basis for the silly joke. But the idea that you blame President Trump, who didn't even hear the joke, didn't know the person who delivered it, whichever the Democrat functionary who decided to hire an insult comic for an event at Madison Square Garden, he was silly. But, he didn't know what the guy was going to say. He insulted everybody, just like he did at the Tom Brady dinner. He insulted Jews a little bit. He insulted Palestinians a little bit. That's what insult comics do. I grew up 2 doors away from Jackie Mason. Have you ever heard of a more insulting comic than Jackie Mason? He used to say, and I'm just quoting this to put it in context, I would never tell a joke like this. He would always say, I visit Puerto Rico twice a year to visit my hubcaps. It's a stupid joke, but nobody would attribute that joke to me just because I repeated it as part of context or because it was at an event. Insult comics insult everybody, and they should have been smart enough not to have an insult comic at an event that was supposed to unite people, something that Trump has called, a love fest.
I agree.
It's been a love fest.
By the way, Professor Dershowitz, I said whoever brought him in, and I agree with you. I don't think it's the president or anything. That person should have been fired. Real quick, Judge Weinberg.
Alan, you just wrote a wonderful article about the media implementing Sinwar's strategy. Would you tell our listeners what you meant?
Yeah, Sinwar's last will and testament basically said, hey, let's make Israel kill more innocent civilians, because the more innocent civilians, Palestinian civilians, die, the better off we are and the worse off Israel is. This is the first time a leader has admitted that he wanted civilians to be killed, and the media repeats and reports, 40,000 this and 30,000 this, without indicating that it's a fulfillment of Sinwar's strategy. His battle plan is to put civilians around military and terrorists.
And of course, they don't distinguish between Hamas and innocent people.
Sure. Of the 43,000, I say in my article, of the 43,000 people who they report have been killed, probably fewer than 10,000 are innocent civilians. They also say children. 19-year-olds with guns are regarded as children. They say women. Suddenly women can't be terrorists. We know that women are terrorists. So they don't distinguish between the terrorists and the innocent civilians, and they let us conclude that there must be so many innocent civilians. And even the innocent civilians, how many of them went along on October 7th and raped and beheaded? How many of them cheered when they brought back hostages? How many of them helped hide the hostages? Those aren't completely innocent civilians.
And what's even worse,
they
give the guns to the 14-year-olds to carry, and they're in jail for about 1 hour.
Yeah, no, and that because they're juveniles, and under Israeli law, juveniles are treated differently. But the media counts them as if they're 2-year-old babies. 17 and 18-year-old with an RPG is not a 2-year-old baby. Yet the image is a baby because they carry the babies in front of the CNN cameras. It's called the dead baby strategy, and it's designed to put Israel in a negative light. And, I think Republicans have done a better job exposing that than the Democratic-controlled left-wing media has, which reports these death figures as if they're gospel.
Right, by far, I agree.
Well, thank you, Professor Dershowitz, and we'd love to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.